just le an paring gi mitte gi lerin province ni Tenzin ni ani ni la jushi shuben shi ani paring gi lerin gi na la ni tamsi na ni zum la tha ani china la ni pe so Indian shuben na paring gi topic gi experiences standing for election, what are the challenges and opportunities. So Sunday ki the focus story ki the chige ge gabla ji chadi ani thame participant ni mang de chile ne phene de so ka ni de ji the Indian la the important story ji shuri ji na the political office run share ji it's really an excellent opportunity for Tibetans living in free and democratic countries to get their voices heard and advocate for Tibet in an entirely new way and at a much larger scale. So it's really an empowering experience for an individual Tibetan who tells one's story with the broader community to debate ideas and mobilize public support. Indian nationalized initiatives and protested on the streets for many years and visited parliaments in the US, Europe, and Australia to seek support for Tibet. And as Tibetan communities become more established in these countries, we can strive to get a seat at the table where decisions are made and shape government policies on China. 다행히 아니 당신의 당부디 Dhongdue Kyinzom 라이 아니 Dhongdue Kyinzom 람니 단대 차라 아니 Amnesty International Australia la government relations team the lead nang shusha and dinge la ani Australia Tibet Council le chale nang ki nyamnyung do ani dinge la chidu surbaji resha ani chidu surbaji gimba matse ani Australia ki first representative cha shusha ani in 2020 she co-founded the Democratic Alliance political party in Australia along with other human rights activists and who are fighting China's human rights abuses. And she ran in the Australian federal elections as a candidate for the House of Representatives. So, tamshi gozurona.
Tuche nonsla. Ni ta tring nonsu doling di jikhan lulu yuwe, right? Disongsa chimila da ma nonzila kangsu ne nonsu de ma saigala pache. Ngan sama pazu jigarwa da doling gi namba, tudu gi namba, samzu jile lubu yuwe gi rewa yuwe. Tangu de nga di shuni shungso, ta ngansu shungi di nanglo la, ani jik chapsi gi. Labado chige jizo nal ta kyaga ine re labado chige gi ta nupsho gegab nal la ne yebe pepa tsui ani susu gegab nal la chik mao nga chepsi ba chigi video na langi langye gi chik deba khade yu na nga chik lapa chik kyamro nang. So I just want to get an idea of who in this audience is interested in running for political office in your respective countries. I just want to see a show of hands. Yeah, we should actually so de lava chang kyang nang ye pe mang bu de chi ni sung shi ngo chang ma re kyang nang da khali khali kyang nang do da de ngo ni des de. So first of all, samolo cha bu chi da ro nang and tuche tenge ma bu shu me ro has three ngo to do Chierangala Shisha Che, so near the Shugita, Yegi, Australia, Tuzo, Tumi Langobe Gunze, the culture of the Sina, then I Grazos Sayore, Loma Ujingala, Australian Deche, any Pudu Shudu, Leguchi Che, any Tuzutan, that they do, and Tuzuchi Lala, Semnala, so Karishusina, Tanganzu Pebaso, any. For many years, as external stakeholders, we have been lobbying our governments, our parliaments. So there came a time when I realized that we actually need to have a seat at the table where decisions are made. Takju Chisegi, any Tuzo Nanglol Chinche, and Suso as a citizen of a free and a democratic country. It is my right and it is my responsibility, and I'm going to seize this opportunity. I'm not saying that advocacy di Kyinzom mare. I'm not saying that Kyinzom sherare. Chulola kebe gabore. Shudunanga peore tuzona. You should do that. Go visit your parliamentary offices. But at some point, it's also very important that Tibetans, as citizens in free and democratic countries, are also able to get a seat at the table. So in some ways, my attempt to run for office is an extension of my advocacy work, the work that I've been doing for the past 10 years. I knew from the outset, and I knew that from the outset. Almost impossible. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's almost impossible for someone like me. In my situation, it was almost impossible. But I still wanted to do it. Okay, in 2022, I'm not going to win. But in 5 years' time, in 2028, or in 2033, in 10 years' time, I hope that a young Tibetan somewhere will run for office and will get elected. Digi nyeki takharishuwe, migu niba di dinirwa, nyeki chik langche, trin chik langche, pepatsola, ani logo tea, rwa, ani simshu tea, and di nyembola, ani nye musagre, nyeki nundushurgre, nyeki lapcha mangbujaragre, di nyeki, I hoped that I can share it with you. So even if I don't win in 2023, in 2033, I hope that someone will run and win as a Tibetan. Digi rewa chiche chikde. Sumpati da karisna tanga Australia digi yuesa. Ani Australia nangla ani lo mangbuchi tanye thongre rewa. Australia nangshi ta gegap mangbuchi nubjo gegap mangbuchi nanglola. The most important relationship in Australia's foreign policy is China. Canada, Australia ki Devadi, the Australia bilateral relationship, it's most important. Ine tangarai ki karutongko desna bilateral relationship la deba kangime the direction kapcho dodan jorwa dewa chidandi nga mudume sonza as a citizen in that country. And so deba mena. So what do? You run for office and you try to change the direction of that relationship. Chikdere and dine that trigger doji that chiktanga three chiking in some sanjorwa 2020 tanga tende ta tanada machirang chi kesule the chikarich house na that dire 2021 2022 la ta kiranzo you'll remember karichiris na covid pandemic charis ne ta covid kabla karichiris na nga sama tingire debate ko shibu chitro deore gana shungla ani gana shungi if you criticize China's human rights abuses, if you caution China's behavior in the wake of the pandemic, it's racism, right? Anti-China, anti-Asian hate, this shibu you draw back up the re, right? The cup there mangbuchi kariches na gana shungi the pujitang swa ani ta gana la kasati Kyinzom China the racist reality Australia especially those on the left And the circles that I work in, the people I know and the people I work with, kunzu sem nang so wa shibu ju chungs o gena la kunzu shira chie yo mare khas na the racism rele ding ki nga de ba khune chung ma so. Of course, racism against anybody that must be challenged and condemned, but we should not confuse racism real racism ti ta ani kena shung la khapte che gi racism de yewa ji che go to same jorwa kena shung gi piju loba tango to sambe gi. So as a Tibetan, I want to speak up that this is not racism. Like ngarang la ta dingje ji go to ani ta zo de do sha di do ta nga mangu shung me rwa ta ine semnal de sam gu yor tele ani chepsi sopa chi ki lamsa candidate ti tamga mare laba to Australia dabuji na ta lungba sangma su ki parliamentary ki dota logo yorwa. In Australia, it's not an open primary open de mare ro su ming ya candidate lang che pension of na kira Democrat ki member ina su laba ya kyang che I'm going to run any contest chi candidate langarwa. Australia ki political party system nalo tinde mare. The political party will pick you, select you, nurture you, groom you. Lomang bo ringala tinde chi che candidate chagrama to 3 year lapa kyang che su ya feel kala to yo mare. Ti langka de medu ani khari chigim bas la chwa. And also nge ki political party langya ti ani I'm not there to advance Labour Party's interests. I'm not there to advance, let's say, the Liberal Party, Australian Party, or main major parties. I'm not interested in advancing any political party's agenda. I'm interested in advancing my own agenda, which is to really reshape or redefine Australia's relationship with China. I had no choice but to start my own political party. Gotsue di yore mangzue ge kap chik nang lo la susue ge to mi thop tang re rwa di indu at that time nang nganzu legu penge nga che ani kinazo mangwe ge ngwashing do khabare Australia na shunge so gotinge he is the main person who founded the political party. My friend Drew Pavlo kinazo mangwe ge ta legu na to yugir rwa hasin ta Drew da nganzungi legu mangko chi pe yu nganzungi para la dole mangko chigor ta what can we do at this stage when everyone is being so cautious about criticizing China, and he is being called a racist for criticizing China's human rights abuses. The day okay, let's start a political party. And let's start the first political party in the world, in the entire free world, that is entirely dedicated with a single agenda, which is to challenge the Chinese government's interference in democratic institutions. The Australian Canada last 1 year, 2 years political party political party, the historic in a sense, because it's the first political party that is openly challenging China's relationship with the free world. It is the first political party that has brought together a coalition of candidates from the Tibetans, Uyghurs, Hong Kongers, and a young Australian human rights defender. Angazu party goes to Tsongmi, that pay kabor, that political party goes to a Kale Shibuji Gare, Tsongmi membership, Gore, the Kale Shibuji Garerwa. Susugi political party slogan Jigore. The slogan, the charisma, my slogan is a future made in Australia, not in China. The Yegi slogan so the dicha de Gorerwa. Nga langsa di karares na nga House of Representatives, Australian House of Representatives gather ngupchunga jior. There are 151 seats in the House of Representatives, and the seat that was running in is called Bennelong. The Bennelong is a very interesting electorate because 20% of the voters or of the population in that electorate is from a Chinese heritage. In a Chinese heritage, a small percentage of that population with Chinese heritage. is also from Hong Kong. Right? And Kyinzom Mangbuchigi Kirandina Langrochi, we are going to campaign for you, we are going to volunteer for you, like any dichar. Pigin na ching, that kind of campaign, shukchumbu shibuji chire, any nga, that campaign chidu, that's chimla ge sungurwa. It's commitment, the shukchumbu shibujire. There is no way that you can do a full-time job and run a campaign. And so I had to take time out from work, tawa ge lega nepet sagon shu, any campaign run la, shuk gache, any gosure. At this point, today to see the long campaign, there was a community campaign. Sangma community campaign do Malakabyo so the obviously Pebe, Australian Yobe, and the Pebats. Australian Yobe, Pebats, Malakabyo Chim to Mena, Nalang to Yomare. And the 3 days, the Nala, there is Zomla, Australian Yobe in Zomla, Malakabyo Nanye. The Dina Langazupi, Capionani, the Tende Marta, Uzare, Dotore, Tomere, Tende Mare, Rangzere, Umare, Savanginamar, Peba inside Jugola, Tada Pebeki, and the Pemediki, Migud Carrebe, Migudi Gana, Shula Capte Chaji, Insa, Samegi, Chongcherwa, Shukutamgachi, Pene Penny, Betkora, Gale Getche, Bro, Beck Gala Chinche, Yegi, Flyer, Lagerwa, Pamphlet, the kitchen, Nang, Sama Godunche. Electorate nanglola, electorate rare nanglola miss boom gather condata inji get sick that pube get sick the boom the tanga captain boom chick the chega yorstakanda me boom chick the chega on your tour. This would be pay corporate and wishing boom chick the chegas with us senjugi permit senjugi mimbo chazan letis mangaredawa the michigi. Ngala kekuche yomare, penjuki captain yomare, kekuche that political party na election na langbe kap the kechishi the ni kor tangbungi political party ki pet ko tiksu digi kira pet langkorwa dingem la kira name recognition kor kira misu yimba de washing kor ta ngazu tabu china chimla ya ta pigina chale lomango na yoro nga tabu china beni long na la nga nyima thangbu beni long na langbe kap de michigi nga su yimba washing go mare Pide, Chizom Chinchen, Godung, Roa, Karishure, Relitisi, Gichilola, Guche, Ani Moduche, Kale Shibuki or Shugea, Langne, Chini Bet Gondapo, Godung, Getche, Tsunduzo, Bagnal Tsunduzo, Hona Tsunduzo, that Mampu Shibuchi, Dawage, Shuga Nation Gondapo, the Gukchin, Roa. Digi Tanyam New Damasna, Hansaya Sanso. Tanga nye shuban shere lo chu nyeki and as an advocate, as a campaigner, that shudu shigama shibu chere. Ine tawa tu tawa in during those 6 to 8 months, lapjane shibu chidwa miss sabasagan kila chinje. I have to tell my story, and that helped me to find my voice. Susugi voice that I pebegi susugi ke washing ya susugi dung karimba. Susu gosu tube, Dimashi tube, Dindegi Naran Gerla, and Ketchuji, Lapjanajurwa, Tichungsurwa. Ani Tamimala, me Damandani Bokeji to be any Sangulam Kamambuji, Azula Tonante, the kinds of Tamatambo, any Ganashula Kapitching race, the Mandashi Tor, as na Chidangi, Chepsi Soko Sudu, any Gekap Chigla Kapit is Mare. Ine tandegi tuzu de la ngazo ani tinde chi chayu de kuzu tona shibuchi chungre rwa ta kanye chishu de karres na te kanye kala ta kanye so ta chishu chiksine digido ta di penjo de rwa chepsi sokona zuela ani penjo ta penchimbo shibu gore the president shabroch na Australia nangi ani independent candidate Tomye Chungre last election dela. I think around 9 to 10 independent candidates won in the last federal election in Australia, and every single one of them were able to raise $2 million Australian dollars. So you need $2 million to run and win an election. Election la ani mitage nangzare shusha na tido $70,000 Australian dollars raised here. 디치디 도소니 토네 뇽사요 말에 다 가르시오 가서 베베기 담베시도 봐 가서 락바 가서 푸도 링타 락 오케이 온디라 데란 치셰 땅 뇽사요 말 때이네 수수기 탑시 치셰 아니 디차 되고를 봐 아니 땅에 직 슈에 디충소 오스트레일리아기 칩신낭로라 캐나기 니슈 다 캐나 다데와 예베기 직 나카디슈 노슈스나 타마데 오스트레일리아 일렉션 기 둠데 저러와 파티니 여러와 메인 파티니 레버 더 리버럴스 이제 카투이네 these two political parties very close competition the khwai ner walung ba khwai ne major parties the pay close yor niga kyaga le ne BJP da Congress ne Oriental Democrat the Republican is always a very close contest is always a difference of few seats here and there that will decide the outcome of the election Australia nal khari churesna it was roughly 10 seats that was going to make or break a political party's outcome the khari churesna out of those 10 seats 5 were won by candidates with a very strong platform for climate action. 5 were won by candidates or were won in electorates with a very big Chinese population. So during the campaign, everyone was talking because Australia now there are around 9 electorates. Electorates districts. Saja kashi England da denal constituency lagdwa Australia electorate electorate ge gu su thache ma jo le di gemiri ki vote khwa phe ma phe le tri kasi electorate ge gu nanglo la gemiri more than 25%. So how that Chinese bloc of that electorate is the indu thamadela the COVID the previous government, Labour, the Liberal Party, the Liberal Party called for an inquiry into the origins of the COVID pandemic. And Australia para Tsongi para la pe dewa kanye chimbu yudu miri mangpochi pot. Because even though they are Australian citizens, because the Australian government was tough on China, they heard. So they decided to vote, even though traditionally all these people in these electorates are very safe liberal seats, they decided to turn back on their party and vote for whom they believed would be soft on China. In the end, Labour Party tobre. Labour Party top go the gimze kharesna chik the re kranzogi policy climate action di shukchimbo yore, but as I said 3 to 4 seats ultimately were won purely because of the Chinese electorate or won in electorates with large Chinese population. Dindegi takhanda Ganagi vote the Kechimbucha de word. This one's a Taran Shugi Shiba Nasherwa. The Ganagi vote the Pechimbuchagore, and she the second more significant voting the Karichagodusna, Gaga. That the Bodo Chapsi Soba Mambuchi, Ganagi, Yumisol, Shibuchi, near the word. That and the Karinga goes to Gaga ki. Indian Australian ki vote raya tapse chigidwa di songzang anzo dynamic chapse gi chigorwa power khawade where does the power lie ani where are the centers of those power denzo hakwa de kechimbore del chinche del dewa thutwe de kechimbor thongdo dorwa ta yegi thamade tangi mangu cha digido thamade nge khrishe isna ani talabcha da mosna khanesna politics na la langdu Kulung ya pokore. Kulung, it's most important. You don't run for office to grab power. You run for office to serve the community. It could be your Tibetan community, it could be your Australian community. That doctor to serve people. Di kulung di someone yine jeki yo marerwa. Di sherwa. Niba de karsna nga MP chiki lajerwa. This is not Suzuki career goal tene mare. Kaisna, the Kira engineer Chigi and the Kira Lobjon Chiche, there's a straight pathway, engineer Chagri, Dr. Chingi Tona Kira, Dr. Lobjon Chiche, Dr. Chagri. Now, politician Chigi, like a politician Gilangat in the Yomare. Inguna Tonante invest chi, in a MP Chigi, like a Takeche, Yunga Yomare, Chagmare, Kaisna good like Tuzu, Chage Mangpojis Chang Sangoreva, the Chapsil Inguna. In Tongurtele, in a langa demoto me lady, yan nangu yomares, Kansna, any Tobiagi, guarantee yomare. You could raise 5 million but still lose. You could have the most, you can be the most amazing, most promising candidate, but you can still lose. These songs are the Sumba finally start early. Tanga di shugo ya dikimze khares na nganzu dobo shina ti thangbo shina chi ta sarwa ta kyan sama shun yundu start early tanda chimla nangswa start from the local government chungzane start from student politics ta kyan sama lo nishu dende redwa nishu sumju yundu tholopki tanda chimla ni ma tholopki president nangrwa ma mangrim ne ma doche networks name recognition michizo ki digi ani kira ngoshimba su dewa thu mimangi ije le tobachi tise khomba khali ge ta ngazu da bina top le ya yu shung le dugin le ta ngazu nge ki gyabjong da migyu da neta di dagmare di path di dugu yo mare sine digi to ta ine kran changma indu kale ge or rawa khali che student politics na zu di nangshi political party nala. One thing I'm going to say tonight is political party na zugure. Susu ki tatu khande ine Democrat ine Democrat Socialist ine the Europe lumba khashi na Green Left ine whatever that may be rawa. Join a political party as a member and tinde chiche mango shing dugure. Member chana ani khali party di ki kiran nubatuna kiran ki ingte kunzuge kiran nubato kiran debat thutuna khali candidate lang rewa yore dinangshi ani MP tsuge one another obvious pathway is tuzo thumi gi ligu nangla political staffers chiche nyamnyu saya tuzo thumi gi ligu nang laga china khali kiran ani chepsi gi chigyorwa kuryu di chazang ko su ri dewa changma thugure dindu langa mangbo yore ine kulong ya po chikta ani ya thachikdonga MP ran chigin lagi ya migu disim gyo mare singe ta di nge ke cherung bu shu sha di do ani dran shege an thiwa corona rwa.
Kyinzom la, and that was a very inspiring and comprehensive talk. Before we proceed to the Q&A, we'd like to start with the second speaker and then move on to the Q&A after. So tamunya la ani chimlamla ne tamshe nangire. The chimlamla sangme kensere ani thande chala SFT headquarters the campaigns director nangidu. Ani Chimlamlani, human rights activist. She's a community organizer and currently also serves as the leadership council of the World Liberty Congress. And she's recognized in Canada's National Current Affairs and news magazine Maclean's Top 50 Power List of 2022. And she most recently ran as a candidate for City Council Toronto. Ani Chimlamla unzunarana.
Tuchana, Moderator, get you now so in a Tomandelia of Pebashin Genji, Tishu Chochi. Taringi presentation to Tadichi, Kachelana Yegi, Udu Layagi, Talamgas, Uradi, Yamuya, which is Sasun, Sonza, Dumna Shingi, Kukstringa, Kanzalia Pata, the dead Gune, Chiktadichi. Go choose Chime Lhamo for Park to High Park. Taringi the presentation dinalia dishu chochi. Kiji shared into Ganga Pergan Shagi Yinea presentation Nalaganga Inkenali and numbering so Yamdo follow Checho and Purulativa than the Yubin and the Shulatira. Let's say any Taringi the Jushinalia Tiva Kashish Chigling Yawosamso Tomandelia Yegishi. ngay lang thuye gita kugap khura raya khura shi chi gorwa pe chashana mi ji machane kya lang thuya gi nubati khandes les la chi orwa di che ani ni batelia context of our elections di cv na udu laya gi khuryu di khares di che nga kharchine lai ni gi kulung ani di shulia ani nganju gi khandes cheris kanya khari tere dil ya dongle khande chebre ani di shulia tan khari sing sus la dinde gyune ni nga drum do je she wo samsurwa tomandelia di nyegi shi ngaranju gi chizo nyegi gala nangmi pama signal la shubi na tangshe di ngaranju gi chizo gi to di injitani shubi na power of community nam gyundu nga dingja khari langbi ne ge ngaranju gi chizo gi gyapkyo na wata gyapkyo chikpo mare chamba ngal tebdi di kengi dangkating gi nga khoi ne ro thugu du samgi durwa sonza nyegi shi cv ne zo phama ta lamdo nange nangmi chizo di gi kating gi nge khari ne lamga lega khari ne legu pediu kalia quran se kati re samgi durwa ani didanyam to nyegi phebe gi ngo chigo mare nga pheba ji me chani pögine dang kadugine loyagi kugabra tu kalia ngone thane mithune kale khazemo khaje khanege des chetu sares mangs chetu sares lani semshu dikedi pönalia nedang de kolia jangdu ta ani pömi pönalia pömi denjiki kolia samlu tangdu kalia mithune kale gyap thugu tu utes mangs ligidu di chapchik ani nibade dire 산에카 땅한테 가서 대기오래 nga thanda changari liyo changari ta samlutang na dome miriki samlutang du changari ta turtle island sire rebegi gap gi nedan kalore kranji gi lungba di rebegi gablo nali oris lani sire dingi gi parte shaya thanda khari res lan shiwina nga pheba che chaingeliya mijirwa miji imbe chane ne ngaran su nam yundu taw tinjung da jeba chawa me basungore ina yang nyamlen chiti kaliya ta handa canada lungba le ya le yore ngara kangchini yongdo ni mare yimbi yine nganzu canada le dedu kaliya dome miri la khajus tupunya yores mixita nganzu le tu kaliya nganzu ki konjoliya dupcha che me bi yine nganzu ki konjo lungba la dedu kabla konjo la nyo khajes ke gi yore yo maris lani di samlu deta chunju netes khoshim bi kharchen la na quran jo lungba re ine yang lopta na la ta tu kaliya konjo yo mare tholo pe chashani university la konjo la fees te go mare free re la shung ki khatu ine di kola shegi re wa ine yang tholo la nga genji chitu kaliya loptu chiknis sum shis ma yo mar nganzo tishi shiteni dugo re koranzo free re chaya re khajin yo mare khajin lana konzo jinda chungi ge thoya khakpo chagor ni ta kana shungi nganzo la phe mirilia siju di chip chiksing tengor wa nganzo phe miri koran ngo kora cheme tan chabi shulia ta pheba la khari ne free te bi ne ge pheba yo mare ye pheba mi yo ne ge phebe gi ngo de mewa chacha tujeji chagorwa di kengin kranjigi kanye khadune thongti galia ngone thane nganjo phebaji imbachani ta michi imbachani kranjle language yore samne muthune di samlu khoshimbi ani di shulia ta kharchi lang is la shirwa di tangi dan devane shire tangshe de nyegi samsunalia lang goye chik thunda kharchin thongsana ngaranje sane migi kanye pheba chuko mare chidane the filipino pomolas mambuji ngalia gyapjo chiga peso kharchine shuwina ngaranje ki udu tuju ngelia ta pandemic chawa dikap tu nganje ki sane delia khuryu delia mangche pesha mangbu menge ki saja dore ta apartment building chumbu chumbu den dingere dikap tu khunju ki rent khangla ya pargor dida mase nganju ki sacha ta mi mangbu chi building chik nang la mi mangbu digi yo chang neum toy neum kablia mi chik la gyebi na such a shambachil dosa yomar mangcheta apartment chick down de go ara nang mi ganga dida me se ani mi shambanyam do dewa chide gorwa elevator inere khari inere nganchu ki such a park tel sia de la mangshe hotspot chader dikap to ani nganchu vaccination raya la menga de kamanga rerwa ine yang kamanga langa la peru la street ka sheni dogore la lamkor sirwa di really sheni dogore ine yang quran zi shungi construction chebr tanganze mangche sacha dile dinge dun motor yo mar khangba ko apartment de gora ta kanye chede gale menga ge jotu go mar kora gyani kora nganze uber kora la tujuji chasa dinde kanye thongdu gale ngaranji gi ngone thandagi ta chuzutimi re ta nganji gi kuchap ji yorwa kogi khaje mo khaje lega yago chene ge bebala ta tes gyapyo chigire ine yang tanda tuje mi shitu gawliya ko del dongba ge tyongalle ma thubina the pere samjang gi kholeya khate chawi islani dinde ge chowa chilesu inji minji nga ingo mare dichini yegi why me sidwa why me la de kaliya ngarang susu ti chithukirwe 인지 민지 nga chegorwa mi shamba chik chitugurwa rwa dinde gi thiwa mamuchi tv and di shuli ani susugi kulung de tasangma do chaso susugi kharichini chi yusani di ngara susu ngone changma cha and di shuli ani kanye khari thegres kanye the tenso ta nganje tonglen chitugure thugu maris dinde gi nganje gi ya thudur mamuchi chebiri and di shuli ani kuryu ta chozi langi yusani ta chegi yubina 첩시기 쿠르유디 가르르스는 당보 따오르와 니동 쪽게 로레야 오두 오쇼까리야 god perks 이르와 코 단다 municipal candidate 구잡디랑 쿠라라레 쿠라 니동 쪽게 로라 톱디우까리야 코로 중이스 데데 시티나라 타디 니동 쪽게 톱디우까리야 타로 추추 차데 tako thane sane diga ji kujap chini locho thu cha de ra toib neong ka le ngja kanye cheti gala kholle yo mar ta khra kursi sigin hindi tari shui na kursi dites ku yang chang cha ra di chini ni election ka le an khrangi usho khaje thoni top dos ngju gi di shimju chebr Kyinzom la song ne shire ngju gi electorate ki sacha de liam omi bomchik hasyor dina shin ngju ge ta 미투네 미강갈이야 대와 수액이 개중부 차기열에 이미네 월쇼 토비알라 배차시나 크라 당이 니동접게 로레 election 직치 주동 월쇼기 톱도와 디코랑 개주 십십시 손장다 미 직치 주동 저지 고여나 아니 간지 손다에 배와 가져야래 아니 배와 찍기여라 미니니라 월쇼루 라우나니 간지 티 가져 적리레스라니 딘데기 땅 간지 차시 저지 띵버르르와 아니 ta khanchire machine ngaju usho langi islani tha chedu kaliya ta kanye cheshe khari thesa reslani di samatamber di Kyinzom la su shu na shire tangshe ding yegi samjinaliya name recognition ming ha go chizo ganga haliya ta ha go ge maybe inege ngoje chitu ani dum thati yobadang du gangaliya ta tenkhe dirwa and di mese ngaju gi usho langi islani tha chedu kala da thu madiyo mare namgi mi osho langi dunzo loni singeliya thadi chinge yor thadi chinge ge lamde nange da party mangbu chingne chigor ta nganja ortom chinirwa ta dawa chus dus dawa thu lane ta ge ne thu parul rera kanye ni cheshe di chesa resams thangbo delia ta dewa ta yo mari yine yang nga ming tone tes Yobe cutting Karichini Reslani Shivina news Tenso Kangalia Negi profile out on the Chunure. Ine young Chuya Chung Tubia de Ken the Katin the Karine, good again, Karisivine, Negi something alia, Pebet Sade Chitu Negi Lega Chigyo. Digi Ken get to death and Yore. Ye Mitsinala Samatanga, Kembe de la Drona, music. Article chik thungi reslan de ye samche ta mainu yimi ne pechachana CBC news di tanga lo chonga re ji ngire tholop lot nye le high school na le park de pheba mangbu yore nga ha go she thaki yore dinde gi article chik tu die pen thos so name recognition city kale mi den se ki nga ngo so chimi ngo ma shin bi yine ge google nang la chimi hamul la ni tv na kharing yi res la ji wa di ta tu kale ge pen thogre di Ganga article mangche Ganga Pebe Zadun Kolia Lega Chiyo Tunzuki Dumde Resamgidu. Sonsa di number 1 challenge lane Takanya Chambuni Nania Chik de Donglen Chitu Resams. Niva de Pesha. Tabiaga Chilaya and Ziki Wudu Laya Laya Kran Zinimani Tim Sur, Petrosian local politics na maximum chiksugis. Mi Mambuchik million the Pesha Bumta Mambu Kilena, Mansuki Sanegi, me local, me lang to be a gita, Kanye take race, Lanikunzi Kansuni, maximum budget chiksure, spending limit. Tanganzuki spending limit the Wimila Power and Koranzi calculate chigre. Ganzuki spending limit T doing guess. Ti doing not love to that I get total love to loan sigora. Di had a year. Did the young the chick kazu doing ye, Kawani Kile or Samia chick. Can you take resums? Ye may in a that Donlen Chituvia digi young reasons sigora. And so idea chikrasu, the idea the Sawani Mare, the Ganzo Pevejizo Nalia, Ganzo Pencho Turop Chidangi, the Subjong Mambuchingal Ranyu, and then so Ganga Delia Pejana Kuga Brasso, and the Kalagare Ganzugi de Samsata, Boom Chick Ganzugi, the me Yimbina Peva, me up Yagi, I mean, me Kazertangal Angzi Chirocha. Mi chik gomun yiga, nang mi chik gomun yiga trebina, mi kazigor. Yeah, ming up yes. Peba, Toronto lia, chichik hasir. Ra, Peba chibugi or Ganzala gomun yiga or donation shendep nambina, and when they mix it with two galia shendep nambina, take unira, go get it to us. Getting up to Maranja Lolir, logic Nisula. Come you get Viena Rangala. Shuma Lolia check Ragger, go getting up to check Ranja. Take Rangi Gumi get some nege, going up to Moderator Marsusubaguni. Sonta Nanzigita, the negi, some little chashy thing chat, any Migangalia. Shendem Longa Tabla, Patrick. Nanzigi campaign launch years, Moderator. Dick up the Tamlo Peronang, Kala Bembelulu Yore, Sheta, the Ganga Yoris. The concert Nashi, the Veva concert Chagima. Then I sing and Zigita, Miuchi Simcha, and in campaign launch video chick survey, Migangale, Joshua Tayachido. The numbling is a Sirochi.
My name is Chime Lhamo, and on July 6th, I put my name forward as a candidate for City Council to represent Parkdale Hyde Park. This is my home. You've seen me as a student leader, community organizer, and an advocate for change, because it is this community that raised and taught me that in times of need and crises, we take care of each other. However, this pandemic also highlighted that the most vulnerable and marginalized members of our community are often forgotten and left behind. That's why I'm running. I'm running for housing justice, for bold climate action, for affordable and reliable public transit, and to radically reimagine what safety looks like when we invest in our communities. On August 4th, join our movement and celebrate the launch of our campaign at the Parkdale Hall at 6 p.m. So together, let's bring community into City Hall.
That Joshua did it start Rami Mochi Peso. Shende Yawichi Nazu. Ani Dawachix Nalia and so Tagonech and Amu the Tidusre, Tigulhas Sutus. And the King Gani Kanye Tsoni Tigre Samyodi, Dawachicrani. Lelao Dochas, Riganga Zataya Rose Lesserva, and the Shulia Kanye Karitavine. Okay, Samia Chichasu, Kachen Lana, Mimambuchiki, Chanchitu Mare Mambulange Chus, Kanga Kengi di Love Digidu. 땡땡이 얘기 가두이네 손도 가르쳐 비나 딩이가 가 제사인스 next 가르치고랑 람들 제다스 디 라에게 로고 단 톱데 깁스 and di shulia da chidane mangbo mewacha langya ke khaje chimbu yimedi di pezenji resamgi du inji tori shubina nganji gi representation sirwa mikpeta sa yamna dingja gala le thubya yamna chokzi chigala dedu gali nganju gi ke de chokzi nal mebi na ngaranju gi kanye ngaranju gi samju khari ne chokzi nal ling mare chomshi nal ling mares dinaishi thema thangbo ngaranju gi ta sane chiso park ta high park nalia suzu miri gi suzu mijik 단데 배바지고 말다 파티야 라니야 차론 칭에 배바 쉔게직 유튜브 항사에 매워체 데산에 라니야다 아파트먼트 빌딩 라 차론 칭에 부부지 델리야 ngaran지기 오밀랑고 레슬라니 디기 포와디 배바지고 말에 산에카 가가 상예기 클래스메이트 멍부지 포와 디케브레 데 겐게 nganzo 찍바찍래 nganzo 월 nganzo 레데브레 아니 디다 냠도 nganjegi wo tu langdu galia sane local elections re phede kolia mixe she gi kugap ra masu yimbi yine dingja khawa yine jodu galia pechashna Oslo Freedom Forum ari choli kichi shedi kunjala laya gi kugap ra su sikti tide shuwi I come from 3 generations of being stateless and no matter what the Chinese government tries to do we're resilient so much so that I'm running for office in Toronto Dikaput mikanga chataps kachenana mito osum ringalia nganjola stateless sur gemishungi nganjola ya nubakanga mew suya thapsi chir lakwa takangba kanga che thapsi chevri ine yang de sida ngate lande jibu mare Canada Toronto wishi wedunalia lande slani tindegi sita chegi kugabraso hande jingbo kyang ne karine pochine kugapde rasura ande chine langgo에 된다 당 개 가제 준비 이미디 남링게 저 긴시레 아니 디다 냠도다 reality check 시거와 oh can you please go back reality check 체 개춤을 삼기도 까냐다 체수 미 멍부치기 god perks 다 그라 로 추투 톱데르와 아니 슈레 시리 아그럴 싱에디 ngan주기 산이기 mayor 요르와 mayor기 몰라 갑죠 체 Sagyuba Kangangi Karilas Lavina Tawaniwa Resumbachilia Namsakura Sagyubagi newspaper Tapanalia Tam Gord Perks Togire Siri Agril Gord Perks La Kapte Chagre Yinea Togimare Zaza Ligire Ani Andrew Gorham Sumba Ligire Chimilamo Angi Shiva Ligire Yinea Mola Worsho Gajani madrag maris. Gajani. Wosho nimadelia nganzi gaja sunju sochik dalhas rasu. Di suine samu tayo mare ngaranje ge digas rag mare ta lai me. Nyeki sanse na nganzi thauge res lani mi chai. Yimbi ne ge Gord Perks lo chutu ringal top devre. Di chupo mare. Ko party kangangi gyapjo yore ani sane kha park ta high park chiko mare Toronto ralia ko kira cheshu nalia chadi yor digalia mi manguchi gi kola gagor and kolia sumju songa gaja sumju songa gitar kolewa ngaji tongda chiklas madagi osho ngaji shoyo shore ani phebage sane khalia osho lupthumye 당봉 아주 미에데 배워 숨동다 미세 여기를 삼르와 직동 하스마도 민두 문에 따두고 알이야 다 디가 too late we're already in it so ganjal이야 teaching means ki osho rayo den 강강 산에 가기 겹죠 인지 땅 수이네 미리 만자기 겹죠 라 그런 지기 gan주기 캠페인 디나리아 수수 통으로 선상 reality check 디 이네 양 까니다 르테 얘기 배전직 슈초치 ngaranjegi prinjudi sogegi choga yorwa dinalia nganimchi dede tat yaktu ta mangbu mithune nyende gore yine yang nimchi khacheslana ogulachi yore ta mingde shumerwa krangi ngalia thema mangbu di kola ya roko cheda yamala di kola ya chik cheda sla nyu nyegi o chido na chigi isla ni ho lam nyu phebe ki chadun kola ya re phebe ki chizo kola roko chea mituni chigyo ani nga mi jingnyam de kiche she chawa shula ya story ra ko nga yablo du nga ko ke ko gu durwa ko ki mi shemba chilan las chance kro yo mar khajin langorsa une semba kyos 미진아나 도그리 맨제 망부지 녜뉴 게미숑네 가져마지 됐어 이내양 스스치서기 미치기 근데 랍디우 갈래야 안 믹스에 유셰다 요마라 이내양 대화 용의 미직 근데 대화 독자지 매워 참 근데 직 스스 겨로라는 라우다 아니 근데 미 샴바 배워지 겹겨 징게직라 랍대요나 겹겨 징 매워지 겹겨시 용의 든지 라르라르 차그러와 오늘 전에 콘다를 지사수 저로 찍 알아잖아요. 저저 갈라이 랑에 페트로스라 아니 야메나 콜라 대시 잡로 치다스라니 랑에 페노스 이내양 치토마스 저와 마무질레 제니 코심 내나 약스레 삼수 선사 칸랍 토마스 듀캅데 이내양 다른 냠뉴셰 된다 가이스란 쉬위나 ngaranje 베베치자 나리아 수이네 리규페튜 갈리아 랑루 갈리아 capture che de kechumbu resam gu ine yang ngaran se chawe nalia pe madona ne ma ke se de yorwa di mi te ne ngan nyamne chena ya gu yore sam gi du ani di tangala reality check siura ngune kanye the reshas kanye ta shamba tomna mangbu yore ine yang susi chiza gi kyanle ya tik tingja kugapte ya langore ine ma 땅이게 코로나 이네테 삼삼 포구도 선자 디녀니지 셰초아치 아니 not ending on a bad note 미테네 가란지기다 칼레 갸껴다 리기 베겨든 좀 미테네 지고에디 개춘부 시우지를 섬기도 디치네 다 파마다 갸와다 저런 것은 of course ki cutting ngaranjole ya khugap sangbuchi yore samgi de sonja mithune lega kharine chebine mithune chegi rewa yo melam yo ani thamadele ya di tinga pene michiki 현재 인계도 백엔이가 신고를 로샤나 지도 드라이 미투네 건다
Tujina chimlamla ani ngara Canada and I've personally witnessed kind of the really big impact that Chime has on our local community and the Tibetan cause at large. Your talk was really comprehensive, and I think it answered a lot of questions that I personally had. And Kyinzom laire sonshe di pe ship chaboda ani ngara gergi thiyoyo mangbuji lenaso tanganzo Q&A onzi shugi ne ta gomazunge la request chigyo ta thandanganzo gi topic di ani chige khala ta election la ko chade du ani thagarang gi topic di gana ani thiwa naronang ani nganzo tarin gozu du district jilu tepso sonza ta thiwa thilen di kamachuyanga che ani mirere ne da thiwa rere pyegi pyugishurona. So opening the floor for questions. Tiwayana Chaikyangronanda. I think.
Hello. Just today, ni Ethiopia di inwa. Thangwa ni ga thoshan nangwa. Thangma mi thangma gi dinde da yungu mari samsam dinde khana ni kumbapya nangwa. 아니 톱다마 톱세 띵 아주 루규 다야 와 주망 땅 아주 로갸면에다 미리 나고도 저 춤란을 중앙에 미루 차되어라 나 로갸제로 교대데 신지다 된다 로미 톱당 치고시 저 디송자 캬니 아주 전주기 지조나 심주 싸워지 되는 나 도지제 아니 몽벌 무토니 심주디랑 주세 잘나로나 쉐 되는 게 티워지 디 나바니가 로페나 만수 갸가 나로라 나페나 갸가기 미시 슈지 갸가기 쳄시기 딩제치 나로라 안 전수시지 위두 나로 슈바 임바이나 페나가 BJP 캔디데이트 시제 아니 이 히마칠 나로라 위두 슈바 임바이나 다 Congress di chikchina nga zu shuna le siwjirwa tin somalayan pheba khran ki chadun la mi mangbu chi chepsi nalo la ju anti shebana thapsu nalo la juma nga zu ya tindi ki compromise ora tindi ki ya cho tindi yung siwjira te sonja ngi Canada da Australia gi nya da mangbu chi singime gi ine Canada la nya da tindi ki tindi chungye gi Europe west kisi tindi Europe yembana tonglin chejo tindi countries in has teach condition toshi
re larung la tiwoti penega re thingi durwa chi shuen chepsi nalo an minute so chi kharos na khuyang ayore khuyang boyore tsame khare ngolen chires na Nyegi da chimilhamla nyimbo tawa tu sigi mare rwa tarup langcho tu sigi mare nedun tsangme kala mudu yoba yung sigi mare ine khari chigaresina krangi tawa khari yoba dala nyegi kuzi chitugure rwa ani zungi ishu tsangma kala nedun tsangma kala ani khelen goya dinde chag mare issue khagi kala ngazugi khelen thura bencheshna chimilhamla yuncho ta nga yecho ki political party na ngazugi mangche in issue changma kala kheling marerwa ine sometimes there are some issue khashe kala ngazugi ga modu yeche lega chithuri ti indu di thola ngegi kanye yugar sangmindu rwa bencheshna da kiran congress langba chashashu congress la toba chashashu jema BJP 미질레 유나 키랑라 띵네스 미자 피기 페바레다 피기 페바 인자 피기 콩그레스 라 랑레 띵예기 카니 띵그레 성도 타김제 되기 오네 라와 퍼조디 키랑라 규지치 도그레 튕기도 당아랑기 섬로 땅땅다 벤체시나 땅아 페베기 이슈 디가라 레가 치체 칩스 소바 상만이 뭘 레가 치고 rwa chipsa songba changme ngi bo laga chigi du chipsa soba chigi ani ngazula labja che khiran chipsa soba shimba dala mato a la de sawa chigi mare ni ha khugyo yesrwa kinzu phebala gyapyo thandu khunzu so labja gi gar phebe issue de kharesna party changme gi gyapyo rwa bipartisan multipartisan non partisan dindegi res kinzu changmani bo laga chigurdo ngale chiguri kunjungi bo chigures la je lobdoin de chiguri ti indu nge kanye tigre chawni na sangmendu
changi tiwa compromise chekhogur ves la di tingegi indi di chapsire tra dingja khari ne dro du ganlia message sinalia laya gi deba yebi na mi mangs ki kuchap che gi tapshi chigora mi mangbu ki kuchap chitu kaniya chamalo ki samju tan jo kanga chu mar sonsan kanya de tegre samgi du tinde gi ken khalore tinde gi jushi ko aliya sonsan ngarang gi kanya de thong yue chang sane kha loku la langbi osho chidane ta federal ta Pedon Kolia, Tapsuba, Imbechani, Pedon Kolia, Ligupegi, Mu Yubina, Sharcha Pedon Kolia, Ligupegi, Cheshi Yubina, Ottawa, federal MP La Langoyagi, Monichina, Yimbine, Yigi, federal town, provincial Nigola party system, your local level of party system, Yomar, you had the Yor, Gablon, Yor, Tangi Shuvaneshi, Kola Gapjo Ganga Yor, Patini. Gine chisu chulone yomare sonza di thiwa de liang ye le thande me di chuchuachi jangde kharchen lana party khari ne jushu chebi na susu ki zo mi khari yemdilia ke kyun testa yobar Petrol Liberal Party nganju Conservative Party NDP suine ngi gi kyun thungut pheden ko le nga le gi pe gi mi zo di chik diraina khasa party le nga thungu mindu sonza de chine nga lojong di chishin bi mi thun nga ran zu sinalia khadyune judu ga lia ngi gi sidi 장모시라 요 말에 삼기도 디치네 첼시 숭데 치야 카부시라 레슬라니 문지 치기 이미 얘네 지마도 봐 말에 선자 미트는 저기 답시 제조
Hello, hello, 님ing sonamde, nga Spain ni, ani ni chua ta engine tango. So my question was, so you are mostly from USA, so it might be more, you might have more freedom when it comes to after the election. But in our case in Europe, what usually happens is that, for example, Tibetan running for any politician, political job, are already aware of the fact that they won't be able to address the Tibetan cause because the public opinion will see it as biased and that we only run for election for Tibetans. So do you have any tips or advice on how we should address this situation, maybe a way to avoid this bias while helping the Tibetan at the same time?
A couple of things. First and foremost, anytime you're running for political office, I think it's important to know why you're running. What's your motivation and intention? If it's only to serve the Tibetan cause, I think it's a little bit selfish, to be honest. Because my goal as a representative of all of the people here is not just to serve the Tibetan community. Of course, that's one of my biggest priorities for me. But my job as an MP, as a councillor, and especially as a councillor, oh my God, I was thinking about what I'd have to do if I became a councillor. I have to go through parking tickets every day. I have to talk about the housing crisis. I don't even own a house. I have to talk about property tax, and street light, things like that. All day, every day, that's what I have to do technically, right? So serving that, how do I serve the larger community that I'm choosing to represent? I think it's important to be true to your platform, true to yourself. So that's first thing. Once you figure that out, and if you can fit both, that's great. And if not, even fitting the one agenda of serving the community and putting Tibet second is also fine. For me, that's option B. Why? I'll tell you an example. Because the mere fact that you're a Tibetan is a victory for the Tibetan people. You being in that position of power, no matter if you can't even talk on Tibet issues. If I became the councillor today, I think a lot of Tibetans would be proud, right? They could say that there's a Tibetan councillor. They could say, we turned that Jameson Road into Dalai Lama Way, right? Whatever it is, we could have turned Parkdale into Little Tibet. So there's these changes that you can make once you're in a position of power. Another example is our Deputy Prime Minister in Canada, she's Ukrainian. Can you imagine how much money Canada has donated to Ukraine? I'm not commenting on the war. I'm just saying that someone who is in that, she's in sort of this right hand, second in command for the country of Canada, much of the money that has gone to Ukraine's support is not just because of the support for Ukraine as a country. It's because she's Ukrainian. So you see, that type of benefit that you bring to the community is only a surplus. So I would say really knowing your intentions and motivations first, serving the community that you promise to serve, whichever that community is, and the Tibetan movement will benefit no matter what.
Hello, 정말 어쩌실래? 아니 tatanda 강한 이슈나 신 close interaction son자 내가 좋아다 믹스에 아니 삼치지 쉬나 삼세요 아니 디카린라는 다 나랑이나 2015라 펠라드야 고급 쇼소야 아니 디갑스 아니 young generation 근데 로총 망부지냠도 다 냠도 interaction 기 고급지라서 아니 군수 레와주라다 안수 가드나 표현아 동심 냠제라고라다 어디 칸다로 지층들라나 치밀라도 she has proved it miss ngansu khaduna la yo ngansu young generation mangboji phetyong gangla international table gang do si thoya gi thisul le do res jam chi thuji gadin la ni khungsu khaduna ngansu la ga ya ga ji chiana khungsu gi da rewa ding ngansu kong thu ri samu do ngarang ro ne yo ni khaya seng ngansu do la trama sie jang sie ani kho ga salai du ge ji chi da na phyening gi aspiration ding ngansu tak ta tip go mara 디시디 안에 드링아 심바 교로 총수 가질랑이 양다 슌슌도스랑 안수 젠주기 페미도스 지다 잠시 투지 같은 게다 제진 둔자강라 아니 고갑 망보지 렌토고리 슈에나시 아니 단데도시 렌토아디 아니 표현의 망보지 시기요나 도수이 지 홉디다 오니 체르로다 아니 안수 슌슌 망보지 망바 치밀라나시양 제지강라 아니 덴데 콤바 망스페이라 리와지주 아니 투시나슈요
Yeah, my question for you guys is, in your careers, I'm sure you've observed many people fighting for you, next to you, and against you. Just anecdotally, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen people make in their campaigns?
I think one of the, I won't call it a mistake, but I would say one of the lessons I've learned from my campaign is the messaging. My campaign, of course, it is not just about Tibet. It is for the Australian community, because I was trying to really redefine Australia's relationship with China. So at that time, people who were, let's say, anti-China are mostly from the right wing. But personally, my values and the policies I believe in are more from the left. And when you run in an election, you can't just run on a single issue. You have to take a position on a number of domestic issues. So internationally, let's say, my China platform was supported by many on the left, right? But the positions I've taken on the domestic issues are more from the left. So a lot of people have come to me saying, you know, my campaign platform, the messages are quite mixed. And many have, in fact, advised me that I should have just run with just one single message, which is just on China. Because my platform also has few positions on climate change, on housing, on social policies, things like that. So it's really being clear on what you stand for, and having a consistent message is one. And if you think that your messages are going to confuse people, then I think, yeah, it's really coming up with a message that can work with the audience you are trying to reach.
One mistake I think that's common in political spaces is actually not understanding why you're running. That's the first question you're asked when you go to the door. You know, why you? Why should I trust you? You know, that's the first question that you, and probably the last question that you have to keep answering. And so when you don't have that answer for yourself, it's hard to always say the same thing again and again. It gets tiring. But if you know why you're running deep down inside and your motivations are clear, No matter how many times you're asked, it feels like, a Tibet question to me, because I'm used to answering Tibet questions all the time. It just feels so natural to me to be like, in 1959, this happened, and now this is happening right now inside of this, So for me, running the political office, I think having that really helped us and really put us on the map, feeling confident in front of 6 candidates who all had some sort of experience. So that's a common mistake. And then for me, in our campaign, because I think it's best to talk about personal experiences, it's actually delegation. It's political suicide to be your own campaign manager. You have to be able to have your right-hand person that manages it all, so you can be the, right, all day, hi, nice to meet you, what do you care about? I didn't have a campaign manager for 3 months into the campaign because I couldn't find the right one. And that's systemically a challenge that many of us face who are first-time runners, because you don't have the networks, you don't have the people that will freely come and volunteer for you, hint, hint, for a job later on, for free, because they don't think you're going to win. So they don't come and work for you for free, because you need to pay them otherwise. So I didn't have a campaign manager for 3 months, and I remember leaving my office at 4 a.m. on my bicycle, and then coming back at 9 a.m. with a smile on my face. So physically, I was done, because after everybody left, after 6, 8 p.m., I would stay back to do the planning of my campaign, doing the managing and staff salary and administrative work for the first 3 months. And even after that, because I had done so much of the planning, when I did get a campaign manager, I was a little bit hesitant. Not just hesitant, it's hard to trust somebody all of a sudden to do everything right, because they weren't there for the beginning parts of it. So that was definitely one of my mistakes. But I don't know if it's a mistake in that sense, but
thank you. That's
learning,
that's a really, really good answer.
takeaway. Okay, thank you.
I'm Tenzin from Los Angeles, California. So in California, we have congressional districts. Chimla, you answered actually some of those things. I was going to point out, because I think there's some misconception, right? When you run for office, whether it's in Canada or in Australia, or maybe even in the US, you don't really run on Tibet issues. You have to run on local issues. And Tibet issues benefit from gaining access. So if somebody gets into office, you're going to get access. So, Lawrence, your earlier questions about whether running for office will create, some negative kind of backlash on Tibet issues, I don't think. It's really going to depend on individuals. If you win office, and if you conduct yourself in a way that's going to offend certain political parties, then it's going to be a problem. On the other hand, politicians always have policy differences, but you can conduct in a cordial way. And so I don't think there's any fear about having negative kind of backlash, those sort of things. So, everyone should feel encouraged about running for office. And, for example, I'm not running for office, by the way, but I'm politically active to some extent. I belong to a political party there in California, and so because I do that not because I picked a political party not because of Tibet issues, but it's about fiscal policies, those kind of things. So that's why, I think people should run for office and shouldn't worry about whether it's going to have a backlash in Tibet issues or not. I don't think that's going to be happening. Thought I'll mention that.
Yeah.
And just a question actually, for you. I'm assuming, Chimla, I think you made it clear, but even like Kyinzom, for you too, like, even though you identified China issue as a primary thing, you didn't really pick it because of Tibet, because you picked it because how the China relations it's kind of not benefiting Australia. So you kind of identify how your policy is going to benefit Australia and people in Australia first and foremost, and that's how you're going to run, right? I mean, I assume that's the case.
That was exactly the case, which is my campaign slogan. It's not free Tibet. My campaign slogan is building a future made in Australia, not in China. So I think.
I just want to add one more thing as an example. Growing up, because you're politically active and out there, political parties actually notice you. They come to groom you And if they see you as an asset, political ideologies actually come in second. I think winning the seat is one of their priorities. Just like that's a microcosm of world politics, right? Geopolitics. Every country wants to do something for Tibet because they want to hurt China, not because they care about us. Sorry to break it to us, right? That's a reality check. So similarly, same thing with the political parties. When I was in high school, I remember political parties being like, who's she? Because Parkdale High School, President Chebi. And then in university, when I was in Scarborough, I had the right wings being like, anytime you want to run, Chime, just let me know, you have a seat for me. I was like, I don't identify as this. You mean it? They're coming to poach you because you're politically active and you have something to bring onto the table. And I think as a Tibetan, we've been trained from a baby to be a campaigner, to be an activist. And door knocking and talking about your issues and talking about your story and narrative is embedded in our blood, right? We all know our 1959 story. We all know that we're activists. We are actually experts in ways of being storytellers, I think. And that is an asset to become a politician or to become successful in any other field. So just getting out there, being politically active, and showing your interest in being in politics, I think will get people's attention. And then, of course, Kyinzom and I, if I may speak on behalf of her, is that we're available. We will support and, if possible, even give time to contributing towards your political campaigns if you wish to do them. So, thank you.
Okay, so I think just final question.
Yeah.
Sungshen number ngila ngi thabane tuji che saninge gi mixte gi tiwadi jisur Kyinzom la yi. My main question is for Jisur Kyinzom la. As mentioned earlier, you ran and served as the Member of Parliament for Australia and Asia, and also ran for office in Australia. I'm wondering if you can share some of the bigger comparisons and differences between running for office, for Tibetan office versus running for an Australian office.
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. But I think, as you pointed out, I might be perhaps the only Tibetan who has served in the Tibetan parliament and has also run for office in a foreign country. So at a fundamental level, politics is politics everywhere because we are all human beings. So our aspirations, I think it's fundamentally the same. The principles, the techniques, campaign techniques, messaging, the principles I have applied in Tibetan politics is what I took to my Australian election run. But of course, in an Australian election, it's the scale, that was the most obvious difference. And it's the unknown in the Australian election, whereas here in the Tibetan society, I'm very familiar. I know the people know me to some extent. And so now if I go back to Tibetan election, it's so easy. After having done all the Western election experience, I would find it really easy. Pubegi election it's all Facebook, WeChat, Australian election it is really hard. It's not just door knocking, it's migi YouTube migi TV screen channel chaza name recognition I want to go back to my previous point. Aspiration, if you have political aspirations, you really need to start early. It's a long-term investment, and regardless of whether you win or not, you will still benefit a lot just from that own experience. Now, Australia, I've been in Australia for, I think, might be my 18th year. So the things I've learned about Australia as a country and Australian politics in 8 months, I've never learned that from those 17 years. So it really helps you. Professional life, all the networks you have built. I'll just give you a small example, one benefit that I have gained from that experience. Prior to that Australian election experience, I was working as an activist in a Tibet advocacy group. So at that time, I used to reach out to all the politicians, all the journalists, whenever there's a 10th March uprising rally, or whenever we used to go to Canberra to lobby on a Tibet lobby day. But none of the media, none of the journalists would take interest in me, right? Because they would see me as someone from a small community. And they think the Tibet issue is very niche. But since I ran in the election, the journalists started taking interest in me because he is someone, yes, she's from a small community in Australia, but she's someone who has participated in a federal election. So now I have relationships with pretty much all the journalists who are covering foreign affairs. And this kind of access really helped me when the Sikyong came to Australia recently. All I had to do is reach out to all my networks in the media. And when I reach out to them now, they take my words more seriously. So this is one small benefit, to really put yourself out there and speak out. I'm not sure if I directly, address your question, but yeah, fundamentally it's the same. And so don't be afraid. There are some unknowns, of course, in a larger context, but it's the same because ultimately we are all human beings.
And I would just like to thank Chime and Kyinzom for their speech. And, they've had incredible achievements despite the multitude of obstacles stacked against them. And it's been really inspiring as a youth. And I would like to thank all the participants for showing up. I know it's late, it's 9:30, and for being so engaged. And I'm sure that kisi jela tiwa thanda ganzugi leeng gyama tuye dinte yuna ani jela Kyinzom la da Chime la tega chane ani tiwa leeng gyagi khugab yore ani changalo simjanangos.
So Dhongdue Kyinzom hello Dhongdue Kyinzom la tujina Chime la tujina ani Norzin la tujina ani Chime la thengi thambandela leeng josa phene message legi jondi ko la kisuwe na that under this
nga tende chowa shukchumbuke gi ken de kharis len shiwina ni don chogulo ya kanya mamuchi teso mi khashesh kensi re gimi shung dan dewe chik lubju choso tholo lobra gi choso lubju chokbe gi choso chadyu gania da gimi shung wene mamuchi gi kanye devre imbi ne dikap tu une phena ne phemi mamuchi gi ngalia thage gyuni dewa che tapshi ches dikap tu lengya la nga logo ke mas nya ha kos punjoli akanye thegi yobedi kchen ne shulia nga temeni sums proof pangba rasu Quran ji gi phena lia nyi gi par de tamshas lani michi gi lapso parthongs lani ditanyam do shamba ji michi gi WeChat ne chu nganyam do Quran nyam do pa ya gyo ji tangdwa di shulia lengya me gyo chas Quran zo pingya ji re dinde gi ne chu mangbuchi chundu ga nia susu pingya nyam do ge dewa ganga che go kerwa ni don chogo lo chugu lo shulia mize ganga jabulosu nga chugo mare nye phame ta nye nami ganga lia ka nye mami chi thevre ta tinju ka lia phenang gi phemi tinju de chi tu kana leng kya ma to mixed emotions cha derwa an thanda tu ju de lia len di radi ka lia lengone kya gi de ba shiu chi ke so ani gawi yeah just dila deshe kya ho yo mare samgi tungan su pheba ji bachane khadine nang sina khare phe lana khande yores lane tinde gi thewa thishi bare dikap to ne michi ki ta tinde len thiti ka ya gal le mangu ranyu ina ya le ki pha kya le logo diking min do ina thu delia logo kes ngone thangne khran jala laya gi te ba shu chi kes kanya khari thegi menga ha ma go yimi ne leng kyap thuye gi thuju di kap to chaso ni sonza di ngara mi tenalia thuju ke chimbo chi chaso ani mithune phedeng kwalia ngara je phebe cha de la ya le gi pe gi simshu ke se gi shi la ore jungsa chi cha de gi do sonza di shawi an namlinge cholia phentho wi na Tranzege, thing I love Shimbi Nam Yundu the Chamba Gapkur Gala Ravadi Chimila Rago Mare Peba Sadun Chil Garanja Pebe Sadula Leguba Chigla Ragor. The Ngala Ragi or Maringanza Kangala Ragi or some gitu Suine Pebe Sadula Legube Bina Susule Manga Shelia Colia Samatange Chimbina. The land the Kangala Kabiri some git sonza message thing around Instagram DM nangla chikul ha then I think it's a disservice and injustice to everybody because the Tibetans inside of Tibet don't think of Chime as me, the one that likes to play basketball on her free time. They're thinking about a young girl who is outside in exile and is trying to do something for Tibetans inside of Tibet. And that is all of us. So this message applies to all of you, and it's my duty to share this message with you all, that Tibetans inside of Tibet have not only hope, but they're watching everything and anything that you're doing that they have access to. And not only that, they're risking their lives to send out messages like this to us, to say that they're watching us, and we must keep going. Yeah, 투제나.
나서 치밀라 투제나. 난 다리 공무 소대장이 정말 투제나 쉐이. 제.